Today I'm going to show you how to create this procedural butterfly texture. I'm going to show you 6 different variations here, and these aren't really photorealistic. I say more stylistic with the choices I made here. And this is what our end node setup will look like. I've just started a Patreon as well, where I've posted all the tutorial blend files if you want to become a patron, as well as a few free ones too. If you like what I do, it's a great way to support me. To set up our scene, I'm going to delete this cube and bring in a plane. I'm going to change the entire middle area to my shader editor and hit N to get rid of that shelf. Just go ahead and add that material that was on our cube onto our plane. I'm going to change the top right to the 3D viewport and just make this a little bigger so we can see what's going on. Zoom in a bit and hold down Z and move your mouse up to go into rendered mode. I'm going to go to the render settings and change it to the Cycles render engine. And we don't need to worry about experimental. We're not going to be doing any displacement here, but go ahead and change it to GPU compute if you have access to a GPU. Just going to move this principled BSDF out of the way for now, and I'm going to use a setup that I actually used back in my jellyfish video, which is it's a technique I first learned from watching a Simon Tom's video. So thanks again, Simon. I hit Shift A there to bring in a new node and selected texture coordinate node. Then Control Shift left click to get a preview. I'm just going to keep doing it until I see object there. Bring in a separate XYZ node and just place it afterwards. Then we're going to bring in a math node. Place it here and set this type to arctan2. I'm going to plug Y into that bottom socket. We can see we've got a radial gradient. It starts right here. This is -1, and it goes to 0 halfway here, and then it goes to 1 just at the end there. And so I'm just going to remap those values by bringing in a map range node, placing it here. And this first one from min, we'll change this to -pi, and this second one, we'll just change it to pi. And now we've got 0 right here, all the way to 1, going around in a circle there. Then I'm going to add another math node, place it right here, and if I click on this area here and just hit M, it'll change to multiply. I'm going to change this value to 4. Duplicate this math node here, and change the second one to fraction. Now we can see this right here, this multiply, controls how many sections we have. So when it's set at 4, you've got 4 sections, and each one is like, negative, or 0, pardon me, to 1, 0 to 1, 0 to 1, repeating just like that. So I'm going to duplicate this fraction, put it right here, and change this to subtract. And if I put this to 0.5, we can see it's subtracting 0.5 from all the values. So now it's -0.5 to +0.5 in each of those quadrants. I'm going to duplicate this again and change this to absolute. What that's going to do is it's going to mirror everything. So now it's 0.5 to 0 to 0.5. And if I take another multiply, place it here, and change this to 2, now we've got again 1 to 0 to 1 to 0, just like that. So the next step is I'm going to bring in a vector math node this time, and again run object into that top socket there. We're going to change this to length, and this just creates a circular gradient there, or spherical gradient, I guess I should say. And then what we'll do is we're going to bring in another math node, change this to subtract, and we're going to subtract this top socket from that bottom socket there. We'll just see what that looks like. Let's just move this over a little bit here and move this over as well. And I'm going to duplicate this subtract here and just change it to add. And we'll just run that length into that second socket there as well. Let's put this subtract down here as well. We'll just change this to something like 0.2 for now. Then I'm going to bring in an RGB curves node, place it here, and duplicate this, and also place it right before this subtract node. And now what we can do is we can kind of change these points on these RGB curves nodes, and it changes, the shapes we have here. So we can really customize this stuff. Some of it's a little bit more predictable than other times, but we can play around with this and really change some stuff around. So I'm just going to reset both of these here for now, and we're going to duplicate this entire setup with Control Shift D so that it stays attached to this texture coordinate node, just like that. So now we've got these 2 setups here. This top section, this is actually going to be our top wings. So I'm going to put it in a frame here with all of these nodes highlighted. I'm I'm going to hit Control J and hit N to get the shelf to appear on the right. I'm going to title this Top Wings. I'm going to select these bottom ones here the same way. Just highlight them like that there. Control J. We'll call this Bottom Wings. Hit N to get rid of that shelf again, and I'm going to mix these two adds together here by hitting Control Shift, holding those down, and right-clicking from one node to the other. So we got this mix here, and we want to figure out some way to separate these two here. So I'm just going to do a really simple setup coming out of Object here. I'm going to bring in a math node, just place it right here, move it down here, and this is going to be a less than node. And also bring in a separate X, Y, Z because we want it to separate on the Y axis. And we'll just set this to 0. Now we've got black on the top and white on the bottom. If we plug this in and view this here, if we change this right here, it's only going to change the top ones, and the bottom wings are going to remain unchanged. So I'm just going to undo that. It's too much, so replug that in there, view this, and let's go forward from here. I guess let's just frame this as well. Control J, and we'll just do wing mask or wing separation. Hit N to get rid of that shelf. Let's try to roughly outline how these wings are going to look at first. I'm just going to the top wings section and to this RGB curves on the bottom here. I'm just going to kind of, put something there that looks kind of like a wing. Basically what we're doing with this curve is we're doing this same line right here that just gets mirrored right here. So you just kind of, work with that until you get something you like. But I'm just going to do something like this for now. That works fine. And then do the same thing to the bottom wing section. Just something like that there. So one of the problems here right away is we kind of need to rotate this a little bit by 45 degrees. We can do that with a vector rotate node. So let's bring that in, vector rotate, and I'm just going to put it before this separate X, Y, Z. Just type in 45 there, and do the same thing with this guy right here. So now we've got kind of a rough outline for this here, and we can control that wing size with this subtract node right here. If we raise this up, those bottom wings are going to get a little bit smaller. Why don't we do something like this here as well? Maybe something like that. Looks nice. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll adjust this slightly as well. Yeah, looks good. Next, I'd like to create two masks that come out of this mix RGB. And to do that, I'm just going to set up two color ramps here. Hit Control Shift D to duplicate it while it remains attached to that mix RGB. And for this top one, we're going to leave the black at 0, but we'll change the white to 0 or 0.005. So just really, really small there, really sharp gradient. This second one here, let's swap the black and the white. We'll put the white at 0.13 and the black at 0.14. Let's move this principled BSDF back here, and I'm also going to bring in a transparent shader. We'll just mix these together by holding down Control Shift and right clicking and dragging from one node to the other. And this mask right here is just going to be used to mix these together. So now we have some transparency, behind here. I'm going to just create a plane so we can see that a bit better. Move it up there. Now we can see if we change this color here, we've got some transparency on our wings. I'm going to set the roughness to 1, and let's look at the color here. I'm going to go to the hex. Oops, let's zoom in a bit there. Go to the hex and enter in this brown color I had, which is 35291F. I'm going to duplicate this mix here, just place it afterwards, and this other color ramp is going to be used to mix this guy here. And we're going to put in a glass BSDF as well, and just run it into the bottom socket there. Make that the top socket. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So now we've got the brown outline of the wings, and then the glass is kind of the middle. So if you change this color to, whatever, it's got kind of a neat effect there. You could use whatever you want for the insect wings. I don't think glass is super photorealistic. It's more of a stylistic choice. Yeah, this is just what I did in my original render there. Next, I'd like to create some kind of at least minimal cell pattern here in the wings. So to do that, I'm going to bring in a Voronoi texture and run object right into this guy here, into the vector. If we view what's going on, you can see, it's this Voronoi, which you may or may not be familiar with at this point. I'm going to change it to distance to edge, and then we get kind of a cell pattern here. I'm going to change the scale on this Voronoi to 4, then bring in a color ramp, just increase the whites in this here. I'm going to bring the white down to 0.1, and the black I'll bring up a little bit to 0.02. So it's a little bit thicker, not by that much. I'm going to move this mix shader and this glass over here a little bit because I want to add one more mix shader just after this glass here actually. And grab this principled BSDF here, duplicate that, and just change the color to black. If we run this into the bottom one there, and then this color ramp into the factor on this mix shader, we can see, actually I got that backwards. Let's do it one more time. There we go. So actually, I just want to tighten this up a little bit too here. Why don't we move that white down to like 0.05 or something like that. That looks pretty good. Now we've got a separation with the black and the glass shader there. What I'd like to do as well is make it so that this is a kind of a horizontal symmetry so that the left side just mirrors the right side. And so, we could always just kind of do a separation in the middle like we did with the vertical separation. But this is a little easier because, like I said, there's just going to be symmetry. So let's go ahead and hold down Shift and right click and drag, and we'll create a node reroute point. Then I'm going to bring in a separate XYZ, place it right here, and a combine XYZ, and place it right afterwards. We'll just run all of these into each other. I guess you don't really need the Z, so don't worry about that. I'm going to bring in a math node, place it on the X noodle right there, and we'll just change this to absolute. And what that does is it mirrors the left side with the right side there. So if you change anything on the right side, the left side will follow. What I'd like to do next is kind of distort this Voronoi texture here so that it's kind of angled away. So I'm going to bring in a vector rotate node. I should have spelled more of that word. There you go, vector rotate, and then a mapping node right afterwards. Place it right there. I'm going to change the vector rotate to -40, and then the mapping. I'm going to change the y to 3 in the multiply. So you can see it's kind of stretched out this Voronoi pattern, and it's angled it away. I want these ones to be angled down though, so I'm going to go ahead and move this up. Hit Control-Shift-D so that they separate but remain attached to the node reroute point back here. And then I'm going to drag one mapping node to the other so we form a mix RGB. What we're going to do is mix it with the same vertical mask we created down here, which I guess I never named this or something happened. So let's just name it vertical separation mask. I think I named it before. I'm not sure what happened. I'm going to run this into this mix RGB as well. And we'll clean this up eventually, but I'll just move this down here for now. So now we can see if we move this around here, it affects those bottom wings. Why don't we set this at +40? Actually, I had it at +50. That's a pretty good number right there. So one more thing we're going to do is just add in some noise distortion here. I'm going to put this mix RGB right here and add in a noise. And I'll just put the noise right here, but I'll connect it back to this reroute point as well. So it's coming out of object essentially, and also mirroring. So let's plug this into the bottom socket right here, and then we'll change the size to 1, and this is going to be set to 0.4. So it's not going to have a huge influence, and just kind of gives it these light curves. Just going to spend a minute just cleaning this up a little bit so it looks a little bit nicer. Just add in some reroute points here at the very least, just so we can see where everything is going a little easier. So the last thing I wanted to do is kind of create a way to twist these wings. So the way I did that is just using a vector math node. So let's go ahead and bring that in. We'll just leave it on add, and then I'm going to bring in a gradient node. Place it right afterwards. Run this into the vector. And I'm going to take this reroute point and run that into the top socket there. So if you look at this here, Linear is not the one we want. We want spherical. It turns this into a spherical gradient. And if we move this around with the add, we can see if we move it into the center, it kind of, uh, has that vertical symmetry. So it kind of turns into a leaf shape there. We can move this around with this guy here. I'm going to set it at negative 0.4 for the x and negative 0.3 for the y. Then I'm going to bring in a color ramp and place it right after that gradient texture. The black is going to come up to 0.85, and the white is going to stay at 1, but we're going to change it from white to like a middle gray color, 0.65 value. So we've got these two dots that are just mirrored. I'm just going to move this up closer to this vector rotate node because this is going to have to do something here to the top wings. I'm going to duplicate this vector rotate node, and this part's a little confusing. I'm just going to kind of go slow so I can make sure I get it right. I'm just going to run the color ramp into the angle there, and I'm going to take a math node, place it right here, set this to multiply so we can kind of control how much of an influence this has. Set it to negative 1.1. We'll plug this into this vector on the separate XYZ. And this vector rotate here that we had it set up before, this is going to go into the vector rotate right here. We can see if we control this right here, we have an influence as to how much this circle kind of influences this texture. And if this is larger, we can do more stuff. But this is just how I had the first one set up. So this one doesn't have too much influence outside of this little circle it creates on the wing there. I'm going to duplicate these nodes right here. Hit Control-Shift-D to keep them attached. And this is going to come down to this setup here. This is going to run into the vector on that separate XYZ. And this vector rotate is going to go into here instead. We're going to change some stuff right here, though. We're going to change this add to negative 0.5 and 0.2 right there. So then this color ramp here, we'll change this so that the black comes down to 0.65. And this gray, we're going to change this back to white. Then this multiply here, we'll change this to negative 0.2, just like that. I'm also going to change this bottom subtract here to 0.4. So I had my end there. And the rest of the customization has to do with how we set up these RGB curves nodes. So I'm just going to show you one at a time here. This first one on the top wings, this is what it looks like here. The second one on the top wings, this is what it looks like here. The first one on the bottom wings looks like this right here. And the last one on the bottom wings looks just like this here. So then the last thing I'm going to do is just set up the color for this one here. And that is a hex code. Let's go to that section. Make it a bit bigger so we can see what's going on. Here's the hex code right here. It's FDA33A. Just kind of this orangey color. So I just want to name some stuff as well. Let's move some of this stuff around just so it looks a little bit better. Let's see what's going on a bit easier. Oops. If you get something inside a border there, Alt-P, I think I already said that shortcut, but it's worth mentioning again. Super useful. So let's go ahead and name this top part here. Not this vector rotate that's set to 45, but everything else. We'll go Control-J and hit N. I just hit M accidentally and it muted all those. So hit N and bring up this shelf here. And we'll call this upper wing twist circle. You don't have to be as lengthy with your title there, but that just helps me. And then we'll call this Control-J. We'll call this upper wing angle. We'll go down here, and this one right here, we'll grab these four, frame those, move this a little bit over. And we'll call this one here lower wing twist circle. And then this is going to be lower wing angle. Then if we come over to these vector rotate and mapping nodes right before the Voronoi there, Let's select these top two, and this is going to be the upper wing cell angle. And these two down here are going to be the lower wing cell angle. And then we'll do these masks over here. So we've got three masks. We've got this one right here, Control J. I'll just call this the full wing mask. And then down here, we'll call this the, let's see what it looks like. Yeah, that's the inner wing mask. Let's come up here to this one here. This is the cell mask. So Control J. And there we go. We got our masks named. Then we can do these colors here as well, these materials. So we've got this top one, the black, and that is the cell wall material. And then this right here, the brown, let's Control J, that guy, and that's going to be the outer wing material. And then this glass material right here, Control J, that one, and I'll just call that the cell material. So then start just making this look a little nicer here. Just move some of these around. Feel free to do this as much as you want. It really helps if you make two reroutes like that by holding down Shift and right-clicking and dragging through. Then you grab both of them, and then you hit S, Y, and 0, or S, X, and 0. I guess I should have done S, X, and 0 right here. So now they're just straight up and down. You can make another one here if you want, and grab these two, S, Y, and 0. Just make it look really nice like that. I recently watched a couple of videos where people had way better organization than I did. So, it's good to clean it up. Makes adjusting it way easier. So for the first variation, let's start by coming up to the upper wing twist circle area and changing this add. We're going to change the X to -0.2 and the Y to -0.4. We're going to come to this color ramp and change the black to 0.62, and we'll leave this gray at 1. We'll come to this multiply and change this to 0.5, and then come down to this lower wing twist circle, and we'll change this gradient to quadratic sphere. And then this color ramp, we're going to change the black to 0.5, and we'll leave the white at 1. Then this multiply, we'll change this to -1. I've already got the RGB curves set up, so I'll just zoom in on them one at a time. This is starting with the top wings, the one right after the length node. This is the first one. Then this is the second one here. And then onto the bottom wings. This is the one right after the length node. And then this is the final one. And then let's come over here to the cell material. I'm going to go to the hex, and then let's type in FF5060. We get kind of a red, almost pinkish hue there. So on to the second variation. Let's start by adjusting stuff in the upper twist or upper wing twist circle. Starting with the add node, let's change the add to -0.6 for the X and -0.4 for the Y. Then for the color ramp, let's set the black at 0.65, and we'll change the gray to a white. And then for the multiply, let's set this to -0.4. Let's come down here to the other wing twist circle, the lower wing twist circle. And for the add here, we'll go -0.4 and 0.1. And again, we'll change this gradient to quadratic sphere. For the color ramp, we'll leave that as is. But for the multiply, we'll change this to 0.4. Let's come to the part where we've got the top wings adjustment with these RGB curves node and this subtract node right here. Let's change this to 0.4. And then likewise, the one down here for the bottom wings, let's change this to 0.5. So let's look at the RGB curves node. I've just set them up. This is the first one in the top wing. This is the second one here. This is the third one. This is the one on the bottom wing there. And this is the fourth one. And then we'll just come over to the cell material here. Click on the color, make sure we're on hex, and then enter in FBFF39. We got this nice yellow color here. On to the third variation. Let's start by looking at the upper wing twist circle area there and the add node. We're going to change the X to -0.6 and the Y to -0.4. The gradient texture, we're going to change that to quadratic sphere. The color ramp, we'll change that black position to 0.8, and we'll change this gray color to a white. Then for the multiply, let's set it to -0.7. For the lower wing twist circle, let's go ahead and set the color ramp to the black is going to be at 0.7, and then the white will be at 0.8. And then the multiply, we'll set that to -0.1. And then let's come over to the top wings area where it says subtract. Right after this RGB curves node here, we'll set this to 0.25. So those top wings are just slightly smaller. Got the RGB curves set up, so I'll just zoom in here. There we go. It's back in the frame now. So this is the top wings. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Here's the third one in the bottom wing. And here's the fourth one. And then let's come up here to the cell material and to the hex value and type in F07FFF. You get this nice purple color here. Let's take a look at variation 4. Let's come over here to the upper wing twist circle area again, and we'll change this add. The X is going to be -0.6 and then -0.4 for the Y. And then for the color ramp, let's change the black to 0.65, and then we'll change this gray to white, but we'll leave it at 1. For this multiply, we'll go -0.4. Then down here on the lower wing twist circle, all we're going to do is change this multiply value to 0.4. For the RGB curves nodes, they're actually the same as for that first butterfly, so we don't have to change those. But let's come up to the cell material. Let's change the color. The hex code for this one is 89E4FF. We get a nice blue color. Let's check out the sixth butterfly, the fifth variation this time. And again, we're just going to start with the upper wing twist circle here. And the add, we'll change it to -0.6 for the X and -0.4 for the Y. And then for the color ramp, let's go ahead and change the black to 0.65. And the gray, we'll just change that color to white. Then let's come down to the lower wing twist circle, and we're just going to change the color ramp. We're going to leave the black, actually, we'll move it up to 0.7. We'll move the white down to 0.8. I've got the RGB curves set up. This is for the upper wing. This is the first one. This is the second one here. For the lower wing, this is the third one here. And this is the fourth one, the last one there. Make sure that's in the frame. And then let's come over here to the cell color, cell material rather. And for the hex, we'll enter in A0FF7C. We get this nice green color. One other thing we could consider doing that would be kind of an interesting color to put on here. Let's duplicate this Voronoi with Control-Shift-D so it remains attached there. And then let's change this to F1. So if we bring the color input out of here, it basically has a different color for each cell that appears from this one here. And so what we can do is feed that into a color ramp, just like this. And then why don't we set this to HSV, and we'll choose one color here, like a green. And then this other one, let's just do like a yellow, orangish kind of color. And then let's feed this into the color on that cell material. Now when we look at this final output, we see kind of a variation with the different colors here. So that's it. Hope you're able to see what I was doing and how you might change it around, make it kind of a unique creation. Thanks for watching.